Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Emotet, A Tale of Two Cities, How One Municipality Neutralized the Threat Quickly. And let me introduce our presenters. We have Jagat Shah, who is Chief Technology Officer for Event Tracker. And we also have Jay Ryers, who is the CEO of Carver. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jagat to get started.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you, Jay, for joining us here. And today's topic is interesting because it's a current security threat. And a lot of people are being affected, and they are in process of having this threat active in their environment. So we are going to talk about that specific threat. We are going to talk about our customers' experience and some good advice from them. And then we are going to talk about how Event Tracker Symphonic Essential can be a right solution to address this specific threat. To just set the stage, let's talk about how this Emotet type of virus really comes, or how it becomes a threat. Right, mostly these methods are very common for all modern kind of threats, that they try to attack you. How they try to attack you is through a basically generic messages. Generic way is basically sending you an email. Everybody knows, like me myself, is preaching security all the time. But just give you an example, last week, this smart attacker is basically using the behavior make the attack more successful. So give you an example, my own example. 2 weeks ago, I went to a physical checkup, annual physical checkup, and 2 days later, I got an email telling your blood results are available. How they got that information, whether from my Facebook or from, they broke into my doctor's computer first and they sent all the people, but it looks so real, right? Even though I preach all the people not to click on the link which is or email which is not reliable. Even in this case, even though I'm preaching, I felt like clicking it. Luckily, I didn't click it because I really looked at carefully the subject as well as who sent it. And I could figure out this is not a genuine email. But point I'm making here is that that is a very difficult, at least when you have hundreds of employees, there is some chance, in spite of you train them, there is always some chance or some probability that this kind of cyber criminal will take advantage of it. So basically, first thing is basically malicious email comes, somebody clicks on it. Behind the scene, either PDF, document, Excel, SQL script, something will be executed, and ultimately you are infected and the virus entered in your computer. Once virus entered in the computer, then this specific virus, Emotet, is really strong enough to bring multiple kind of virus into your system. That's how whole infection starts. Before they attack your system, your organization, this is basically first thing they do, right? Now this specific virus, actually this virus is around since 2014. It's re-emerged in December. There is a couple of re-emergence of this virus in July as well as in December, but the variation of that virus which is re-emerged in December is masterly engineered. It's beautifully engineered. Whoever has prepared that package, they have taken into consideration of all possible tools they will use against this virus and how they basically camouflage against it. So this specific virus has currently affected many organizations. financially. And really it's designed to steal money. It contains multiple methods of attacking, right? And the most beautiful part of it, you can't really blacklist it or sandbox it because it's continuously emerged. If you figure out that it uses this hash, this registry entry, this IP address, this directory from where it's launching, it's continuously changing. Suppose if I block certain hash, immediately it will use another hash. If you stop one IP address, it will talk to another IP address. Well, none of the protection engine which claims they know the signature of it, they don't. This specific, once it's there, it's continuously. If you look at it, if you see the behavior of it, which we analyzed intensely, it continuously break your organization. It moves literally from one subnet to another subnet. It uses multiple technique to do the brute force attack within the organization. Right, so it's a very, very serious threat, and all future viruses are going to be equally or even more threatful than this. So now basically says, okay, you are infected. I don't want you to, but suppose if you get infected or this threat came into your organization, there are a number of people, there is a number of choices you have. You already have some kind of protection in your organization. You may buy certain tool who market that they are getting rid of malware of specific kind. But now we will go to next slide, but you will see that all this current available solution may be inefficient and expensive and not sufficient, right? So now let's look at the industry threatscape right now. There is an industry threatscape, there is a cyber criminals who are active, and there is a whole industry which is a cyber defense. And if you look at how the cyber defense industry is made up, there are three types of traditional players, right? One is basically traditional big players. They handles probably 80-85% of the market share, and they are required. I'm not telling they are not doing good job kind of things, but they are mainly blacklist or signature based solution, and they are your first line of defense. And that type of solution is totally ineffective with modern cyber attacks like Emotet. Your IDS, your antivirus, your Active Directory, your unified threat management, anti-malware is not going to help you. Okay, they may be required, but they are not. They are just becoming a first line of defense, but they are not going to be sufficient. What's the alternate? Alternate is a lot of people are marketing the solution. They know that blacklist type of solution is not correct for this, so they are whitelist type of solution. But man, they are complicated. They force you complete lockdown. That means if the process is not part of the whitelist, then you terminate it, and that lockdown is not practical for most of the organization. Okay, simply not practical. Too much production loss, not widely deployed, too expensive, and you need expensive talent, right? So that is not, it's an option. If you're Bank of America, you may consider this option, but it's not practical for many companies. Third thing is another emerging kind of industry, which is a behavior-based company. And they are basically behavior, they keep a user behavior and a machine learning of whitelist, but the problem is how to deploy them. It has too many false positive. As a result, you have a fatigue of false positive. You are 99% of the things you see are false positive. And many times you don't have a confidence that whenever there is a real attack, they would be able to detect it or not, right? So this is a potential defense, available defense in our industry, right? Reality perspective, not a single solution is enough to detect the modern cybersecurity threat like Emotet, right? You need potentially more than that. You have to rely on multiple technology, not on multiple technology, but you need to have a smart eyeball watching activity within your organization. Right. So this is basically just I'm setting a stage why Emotet type of threats are difficult to get rid of or difficult to handle it. So here is basically our partner, Carware. They are our platinum partner, and they also provide security services to their customer MSPs. And they are much more knowledgeable on ground what's happening. So I'm handing over to Jay. He's the CEO of Carver, his own experience to share.
Thanks, Jagat. Thanks everybody for being on today. We definitely have some experience dealing with Emotet as well as a lot of the other polymorphic types of attacks that are going on today. We're seeing it across a large space of clients at different times of the month. So basically, as CEO of Carver, we exist to protect IT businesses and your clients from cyber criminals. There are a lot of MSPs out there that don't have access to the technology and have the resources to invest into an event tracker. Event tracker is a storied SIM solution in the enterprise space. And so when we were looking at how to deliver SIM into the market, we looked at a few things. First off, we knew that when it comes to cybersecurity, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and that it takes a team to protect and defend against the threat actors that are trying to cause harm. We spent a lot of time with Guy and his team at Event Tracker, trying to understand what worked, and what we really liked was the visibility and the ability to help us defend businesses and fight these cyber attacks. So it's now a key part of the tools that we offer out to our clients. The visibility that you get from Event Tracker and their team really allows our SOC to correlate data across multiple sources and take action when necessary. And they definitely are good at giving us actionable security intelligence. And today we provide access to Event Tracker to more than 500 MSPs. And we've deployed our solutions to MSP clients in 47 states and 9 countries. So you can go out to our website at carver.net to learn more about us. But more importantly, let's talk about Event Tracker and why it was really important to us. One of the things that we learned that we know from this space, and primarily because if you don't know my background story, I used to own an MSP. I owned one, sold it in 2014. When I sold it, we had about 15 employees and we were supporting about 3,500 machines. And what we learned was that we had this RMM tools, and today, you guys know those. It could be a Ninja, Continuum, LabTech, SolarWinds MSP, or whatever the tool is that you're using to monitor your client's machines. And those agents for you are collecting the system logs, and helping you smooth out all the rough bumps that a client's having, and improving performance on their network. But if you're like me and my MSP, we had a third of our clients were healthcare, a third of them were CPAs and lawyers and other professional services, many of which who had compliance needs, and they kept giving us these checklists, and we were checking off the boxes, what we did and what we didn't do. And one of the places where we never checked was actually monitoring and managing the security logs. Now, if you're an MSP and you're on this call, I'm guessing that's why you're here. You know that the routers, firewall servers, laptops, desktops, and switches generate a tremendous amount of event activity, and we don't have the manpower in this space to be able to review those logs, both from a security perspective and, of course, to check the compliance checkbox. So where Event Tracker really shines and why we went this way is because they help us analyze all those logs. They run it through their tools and then their SIM solution. They water it down to just the things that are important. Then we work with our MSPs on those actionable events to help them secure their space. they also help from a compliance perspective. We talked about that a little bit. So if you've got HIPAA, PCI, if you've got to follow a NIST 800 framework, either 171 or 53, or one of the ISO 27001 or 2 type of scenarios, DFARS, and the list goes on and on. FFIEC, FINRA, it's basically alphabet soup. Event Tracker helps us go back and deliver reports and track that activity. And so the visibility helps us. It's best depicted in this next graphic. I'll kind of walk through this with you so you can see exactly what it does. But it shows what a typical small client, even a mid-sized client, might look like. They've got a main office, maybe a branch office, and there's these threat actors out there, and they're constantly trying to probe our client space. And we know that. We know that they're out there running scans to see what's going on. So David, you can click along with me as we go here. So you'll see the threat actor, and as they start to progress, they check your firewall. They find the open ports, which are pretty easy to do. I can do it in a few seconds on an environment, and then realize that maybe you've got port 25 open to a mail server, and they run a vulnerability scan to see what vulnerabilities that mail server has. And then they kind of launch their attack, and their attack does some things, including making some configuration changes, maybe allowing access for me into the space, so I can actually see what's going on in the rest of the network and have that. Maybe it installs a backdoor connection, and that backdoor connection, after the account's been created, allows me to actually, me as the threat actor, not me as the good guy, to be able to gain access whenever I want in that network. And these threat actors are very patient. They are literally taking their time, and they're not in a hurry. They're not trying to like get in the front door and then go launch right this second. They're doing these over time. And if you're watching the logs, you wouldn't see that bad activity, and you certainly wouldn't see the outbound activity as they start to take advantage and steal data or corrupt things or whatever it is that they're actually doing. We know of one scenario, a client that was not ours, but we were brought in after the fact, where the threat actors had been in the environment for over a year. And that's very common in mid-sized clients, where the attackers are in there doing all kinds of bad stuff. In this case, they were using the client's network to test stolen credit cards. And because nobody was watching the security logs in the firewall or the servers or anywhere, they had no idea these things were going on until they launched the ransomware attack on the way out the door. And so it's really important to know that this capability and the ability to see these different things happening on the network exist. And that's really where Event Tracker comes in. So as you start deploying Event Tracker, you start seeing, and their agents start picking up on the logs and the alerts on what's happening. You'll see as we do the installs, we can see all the different activity. We can see the configuration changes. We can see the backdoor entries. We can see the creation or deletion or privilege escalation of an existing user account, and really allowing us to be able to help defend before they've gotten too deep into the network, and hopefully before they even get in the network, whenever possible. And of course, we can do that because Event Tracker can see the malicious executables and DLLs in a way that your typical antivirus doesn't do that. So now if we go back and actually bring it back to Emotet, I'll share some things that we're seeing and that have happened across the space. So first off, you've probably seen in the news that Allentown, Pennsylvania, back in the middle of February, has determined that they will probably spend more than $1 million in recovery steps from an Emotet attack. It turns out that it's not just Allentown. There are municipalities all over the U.S. That are actively dealing with this, and they just haven't hit the press yet. We are fortunate enough to have had a client who had called for our help when they started seeing some unusual activity, and we brought Event Tracker into it right away. And so that process was pretty straightforward because it was an emergency and everybody was able to move quickly. Event Tracker got us the tools we needed to go ahead and get the deployment running right away. As soon as we got deployed, the Event Tracker SOC started working with our SOC team, bringing up all the assets and starting to go through the logs looking for the activity. And literally within a couple of hours, we started seeing activity that was relevant to actually containing this threat before it caused too much damage. Initially, we saw it on port 4143. And of course, we knew it was running on machines from that Windows sysfile64 folder, which is a common occurrence. By having that information, we were able to literally by the next day provide information back to the MSP as far as what their plan should look like and what they need to do. And we were able to leverage the information that was provided to us from Event Tracker to actually establish that plan. We also went ahead and asked the Event Tracker's team and their SOC to make sure that we are blocking all the suspicious processes and to really move this site to a higher level of security to make sure that the impact was minimized and that we can neutralize the threat. And so when you've got a team that you can work with to help solve those kinds of issues, it's amazing how quickly you can regain control of an environment that would have been out of control without it. So our goal here was to obviously help the MSP protect their contract and take care of this customer in the end, because at the end of the day, we don't want anybody to get hit by an attack. And so Event Tracker was able to help us avoid that and prevent that moving forward. So as we move forward and we look at the actual incident timeline, you can kind of get an idea as to what that actually looked like, because these threats were all coming out of municipalities apparently sometime in the middle of February. So we literally onboarded on the 14th. Literally by the 17th, we were seeing the activity, and we saw some extension of it as Jagged talked about how this morphs itself and keeps running until we actually find the root cause. But we were able to see the activity on the first day, see it on the 17th, start to take real action to contain it. And then we went through our eradication steps. We gave them some group policies and some scripts to run to get rid of the scheduled tasks, lock down the app data folders and other locations where it was trying to run, allow them to get through the recovery process all the way through the end when we debriefed with them and looked at what worked and what didn't. It's helped us go back and actually improve our incident response checklist that we share with MSPs and put some controls in place to really help avoid and protect the space. And so, we share this out with our MSPs on a regular basis so that they can be better at security as well, hopefully blocking these kinds of things before it actually happens to a client. So, Jagged, you want to talk about some of the value for MSPs and what it looks like when they deploy?
Yes. So thank you very much, Jay. The process perspective, whole thing which we are targeting in this specific case, where timeline perspective, right? So day one, if you look at it, it's the most difficult thing is to onboard the customer, right? That onboarding generally takes long time. So over several years, we had a number of customers, and we have one of the most the important thing we achieved is how to onboard customer, how to simplify that process. But that is basically one of the most important thing for a smaller customer, as well as customer who are distributed, as well as the customer who are MSPs. The onboarding is important thing. Second thing is, okay, you onboarded, things are running. Then basically to create the infrastructure to monitor that thing, it takes long time, right, for anyone. So what second things which we have is a basically already prepared infrastructure for detection. 24/7 monitoring team is ready, right? So that two combination is a day one. So you can be onboarded at the same time. Our monitoring team is ready for any kind of detection. And as soon as we start detecting, our level 2 analyst is ready for any kind of incident response, threat hunting. If we find something, right, very second day in this specific case, we could found something and we could escalate that thing to the customer with the necessary proof information analysis. Right? So customers can start talking to their customer and start setting up the process how to contain it, how to eradicate it, right? And recovery process is started. From day 5 onwards, this process is getting even better and better, where all the behavior analytics and baseline is complete. You are even able to detect the suspicious behavior and terminate that behavior from day 5 onwards. So this is basically what Jay described what happened in his organization. I'm putting in this slide in more of an industry term. What is basically each steps looks like. This is what happened in Carver environment, and we could follow this timeline very nicely. So in this section, which we are right now, basically, we are going to little bit talk about event tracker. So we basically come up with a bundled solution. Solution is a symphonic essential. Here you are seeing two terminology, event tracker and symphonic essential. So let me just explain you. Event tracker is the same software. And Symphonic Essential is basically a bundled solution of being offered to our customer, which uses, and Symphonic Essential uses Event Tracker as a baseline software to detect and follow certain best practices. What is the industry's problem? Okay, if you look at the industry's problem is basically whether you are a big organization, a big bank, or a small bank, or a small company, all of you have a security problem which is very identical to each other. The difference between one organization versus another organization, or a bigger company versus smaller company, bigger company has a people army of the security analysts who are working on different technology. Smaller company has exactly same problem, but they do not have a people talent. So if they buy the tool, what are they going to do with the tool? Like if they buy the $100,000 on a same tool, how are they going to use it? Is a massive challenge in the industry. So Symphonic Essential addresses exactly that challenge, which we are giving you the best software with the best practices embedded within that solution, and we are providing you a necessary talent along with it, which can help you, right? So that's a Symphonic Essential in nutshell. If you look at from the security perspective, there are different areas, right? One is basically called is a SIEM and log management, which is basically more of an infrastructure which basically collects all the logs, retains the logs. You are basically collecting all unstructured data, and you are really looking the unstructured data and normalizing this data to make sense. That's the SIEM and log management, and there are a number of people are focusing in that specific segment. Now you have basically SIEM data is coming. Now you have to make a sense out of it. You have to correlate it. You need to really look into it. Like even if you're collecting million logs, but you have to basically detect the threat out of it, right? It requires skill. It requires somebody to convert Greek into English. You need a talent where threat occurs in the middle of the night or a Thanksgiving day or a Christmas day. You should be able to detect that thing reliably, right? There is either separate services are available in the market, or there are a whole different segment in the market who is focusing on threat detection, right? Then comes is a response and remediation, right? Now you detected the threat, how you are going to eliminate or remove that specific threat, and what would be your response? How do you know about the threat? How do you present the threat, right? So that is another area. And most of our customer or most of the customer falls under some kind of regulatory requirement. PCI DSS, HIPAA, NIST, if you are a European customer, GDPR, if you are a banking customer, then GLBA, government has a FISMA, NISPOM, all the people are following in some kind of regulatory compliance. And all of them are talking about the best practices. They are telling you to collect the logs. You need to have a review those logs. You need to review the threats. You need to have a necessary incident response thing. You need to ensure you have a necessary evidence that you are following certain processes. So these are the different areas as a part of security framework. And Symphonic Essential covers all of these in one solution. So how the Symphonic Essential works, right? It's basically first thing is, and this slide has a lot of bullets in it. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but in nutshell, first thing is a small little agent is deployed on all system, and agents start sending all the information to a centralized system which is running in a cloud environment, right? Once we started receiving all this information from all different systems, behind the scene, we are collecting those information, retaining those information, applying different behavior rules, parsing rules. We monitor registry, file changes, application changes. So all the things are basically more of an infrastructure. Once we basically collect all those information, we index them, we do necessary behavior on them. Once we have a behavior, then we really compare that behavior with different threat engines, abnormality. Out of that behavior, we try to detect out of ordinary behavior. Once you detect out of ordinary behavior, you really review that out of ordinary behavior. And if it is a threat, then you have a necessary automated response, right? Maybe terminate the process, terminate the communication with bad remote site. Maybe you request firewall engineers to block that specific port, isolate that compromised system. So this is basically in the background how Symphonic Essential works. So now if you look at it, Emotet type of advanced cyber threat, no matter whoever is the vendor, whether a lot of established vendor is also marketing big player, and there are new vendors who have a point solution. But let me tell you, there is not a single technology or a single product is sufficient or efficient enough to detect advanced threat like Emotet, right? Now there are multiple areas you need. Why Event Tracker is one of the most effective solution? Because it covers multiple technology. It's the same is basically collecting all the intelligence. Endpoint monitoring is basically what's happening on an endpoint, your hashes, your IP address. Then it basically takes, integrates, so it basically takes information from external sources and internal sources, which is a threat intelligence. And there is a whole different market segment which provides the threat intelligence. You need a smart eyeball services to provide a reliable trained knowledge 24/7 with discipline, right? And you need to meet compliance. So Symphonic Essential is all these things in a one bundle solution. And if you look at the market, every line item listed in these things as a separate industry. So I call Symphonic is like iPhone. You know, if you need a best camera, maybe iPhone is not enough. But most of the people, the camera provided by iPhone is enough. The telephone provided by iPhone is enough. So it's a multi-tool, but it works for most of the people. Now we are talking about how did we detect the Emotet type of threats, right? So if you look at the key functionality within the Event Tracker Symphonic Essential, is not only collecting the logs and monitoring devices, but it has necessary modern buzzword like necessary artificial intelligence and machine learning. You have a whitelisting. Whitelisting is very critical. Most of the people understand the importance of the whitelisting, but very, very difficult to create whitelist, manage whitelist, synchronize those whitelists. Those are the modern challenges when you talk about whitelist. Then there is a complete behavior of user network process. So those necessary functionality is embedded within the engine of Event Tracker. Okay, so now let's talk about how does it detect the Emotet type of threat, right? All those things, engineering apart, engineering on a side. Now think about it in a general way, whether it's any kind of cyber attack. There is three things. One of those three things or multiple of those things, three things is involved. Either a user, either a process, or it's talking to outside IP, right? Network, anything if you run, whether it's you call it a Emotet or you talk it any other cyber threat, whether you call it an inside threat, outside threat, either user is involved, a process is involved, and a network communication is involved, right? So Event Tracker, how does it do that thing, right? It basically suppose as for example, a new process is run, right? Immediately Event Tracker machine learning will tell you that, hey, there is a new process is run which has never run before. You know, happens, thousands of processes runs which are new, but it's strike one. Now same process is talking to outside IP, right? It's a little bit their thing. It's not only a new process, but it's also talking outside IP address, right? Little more intense threat, right? Or intense activity, not even a threat, suspicious activity. Third thing is new IP address, which you have never seen before, and is talking to outside IP whose reputation, either process reputation is bad or the IP reputation is bad. Multiple people are talking, you are talking to bad site. What more information you need to terminate that specific process, all right? There are three strikes against it. So same way, whether it's you call it a Emotet, this is how we are detecting it. And those things are being monitored by our 24/7 team, right? So this is basically describing how the process works behind the scene. How we deployed Event Tracker in Carvir environment. See, Carvir has a very unique customer. They are focusing, they are helping their customer from security perspective. Okay, they are really helping their customer, and they have over 500 trusted partner. They are basically providing a security guidance and helping them from security perspective. I would like Jay to talk about that two slides because he has that specific focus on security.
Sure, thanks, Doug. So if you go back to 23 for a moment, what we built with Event Tracker was a private cloud for our clients. And each MSP has their own console access into Event Tracker for them to look at as well. So they've got our team, you've got Event Tracker's team, and the MSP's team looking at the content. And that was important because we had to simplify this for MSPs to be able to push out, to have access to all the great things that we've been talking about here today. So one of the things that was really unique is that we were able to work with Event Tracker to install without having to acquire a hardware, because we know MSPs are tired of having to go back and sell more hardware to their customers. There is a dedicated sensor for each customer, so as they're deployed, they're automatically grouped into their tenant. There's automatic separation of data and groups. There's centralized orchestration, so your team, along with our team, can log in, see your machines, review the log, review an incident as to what was happened and what was going on with it. We have the ability, as you've seen, to be able to take a threat response action. If we see something going on, we can actually help kill those processes, block internet traffic, disable a user account, or whatever the scenario is that we need to help you lock down the environment quickly. Obviously, as you've seen with Event Tracker, it helps check a lot of the boxes for compliance environments. When it comes to deploying SIM, I've never seen anybody be able to deploy faster, and primarily because of the software base that once we've got your agent built, we can help you deploy using your RMM tools to push out the installs, or integrate it into Active Directory, group policy, logon scripts, or what have you, but our team will work with you to get it out quickly into an environment. Obviously, we would prefer you to deploy it into an environment before the threat happens, so we can block it as opposed to after the fact, but we do see both scenarios. And the Event Tracker was gracious enough to work with us to make the billing process as MSP friendly as possible. If you're on this call and you're an MSP or an IT services provider, you know that a lot of these enterprise solutions are requiring you to buy licenses a year in advance or buy a bunch of hardware and invest a lot of money in resources to get started. And so we've worked with them to really help simplify that billing process and make it easy for you guys to move forward with an Event Tracker solution. So with that, David, do we have any questions out there?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Jay and Jagat, for all your help on this. Have a couple of questions that have come in. Please remember, if you have any more questions, enter them into the questions box, and I will ask them to Jay and Jagat. First one is for you, Jay. How do we get a client started on this again?
So that's a great question. If you're a partner of ours and your team has gone through the Event Tracker training, which is about an hour and a half video that you'll watch, in that process, we'll walk you through the consoles, how to manage it, what the onboarding process looks like. You'll then register for a license for your environment, because as a partner, we actually give you a license for your first firewall and server so that your team can be comfortable using it and deploying it. And then when you've got sites, you'll register a site, we'll get to the agent built, and you'll use your RMM tools in most cases to push it out to your client sites. And so we'll work with you on that as well, helping you a description you might need to run in your specific RMM tool.
Great, thank you, Jay. The next question is for Jagat. How will we be notified if there is suspicious activity?
That's a great question. So basically what happens at first things, we have to have a successful deployment of Event Tracker. And then we basically, when Event Tracker is installed, we have a basically very set configuration. We call it a adaptive threat management. Adaptive threat management, that means we have all best practices alert condition, which is being monitored out of box. Now tomorrow threat conditions change and new threat emerges, then our adaptive threat sets changes. But currently we are really monitoring around more than 30 most important conditions for your environment. So as soon as those condition occurs, those conditions are continuously being monitored. And as soon as that condition, any of those condition matches, right, as for example, a couple of conditions are, like if someone logs in as a system administrator and we have never seen him as an administrator before, or maybe you have a brute force attack, or maybe you can see there is a user whose behavior is not normal behavior. Normally he logs in 10 times a day. Today he logged in 500 times a day, right? Any of this condition occurs, it basically immediately becomes a priority 1 incident, and our 24/7 team is notified. And their job is to review it. If it's appropriate, then they will call the customer with all the details. So the answer to your question, our 24/7 team will call the customer as soon as we find the incident and we have a necessary detail to justify this incident. We will notify customer through phone call, or if it's not a priority 1 incident, then we will send them an automated email telling them that, hey, there is a potential activities, you may have to review it tomorrow. If required, give us a call. So this is our response when we find some conditions in your organization.
Great. I have another question here. Thanks so much. How would this work with our ATA and ATP solutions?
ATA and ATP, Advanced Threat Analysis and Advanced Threat Protection. If I understand that whoever is asking this question, they already have that kind of solution in place. We are basically taking the external analysis and analysis of ourselves. Analysis of ourselves means whatever we find it from event tracker. Event tracker is also continuously finding threat in your environment. If we find a threat, we will share that threat to whole customer base. As well as, so this is our internal threat engine. Then we are taking an external analysis from external threat engines, and we basically merge it. So basically we are also, whenever there is a threat occurs, we will compare that threats with your existing threat provider and compare our results with their results, and it basically gives you more advanced or more accurate or results telling you what happened, and you have a little more confidence. So we are basically taking the threat intelligence from external source, internal source, and we have a necessary practice to manage those threat intelligence and share that threat intelligence with other community.
All right, thank you so much, Jagat. Another one came in. How would you terminate a cyber threat?
So that's a very good question. Most of the things, that's one of the major differentiator which Symphonic Essential offers compared to any player in the market. I don't know any player who has this kind of. So most of the people right now, there is a they detect it and they tell customer to basically take necessary remedial action. But here, if you look at it, what the event tracker does, it has a necessary data structure. So if you look at the perspective, as soon as you install the agent, right, it goes through a series of self-learning, which we call it a baseline and profiling. Right. So we basically, for a week, 10 days, whatever is the predefined period, we learn your behavior, what's happening in your behavior. So first, we basically, now we have your baseline, and then we compare, suppose, and again give you an example, that if you have basically for 7 days, we have learned all your baseline, with whom you are talking, who are your user, which hashes you are running, which IP address you are talking, what is who are your vendors, all those things we learned, right? So we have necessary things. Now you all of a sudden, you are talking to China, right? And your behavior is saying that you have never talked to China. There is no reason. You are a doctor's office. You are local things. Why you have a reason to talk to China, right? So it's a behavior. Now the behavior has a bad reputation, right? Even though it's a false positive, event tracker has a necessary means to terminate that specific condition so that your threat doesn't penetrate in your organization. We will terminate it if you have told us that you can terminate the process. It's an option, but we will terminate it. Then we will review it. If it's not a threat, we will put that condition into a whitelist, right? So this is a built-in process of detecting the cyber threats. And if cyber threat, and we realize that it's with certain accuracy that this is a real cyber threat, then software itself will terminate that specific process, that specific communication, or we will request you to isolate that specific system.
I think we have maybe time for one more question. Do you recommend replacing antivirus with Symphonic or complementing with this antivirus with this?
First of all, antivirus has a purpose to meet. That's the first line of defense. You don't want to replace the antivirus, you want to put additional layer on top of it. Protect yourself. So I'm not recommending taking antivirus out.
All right, I think that's great advice. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions right now. Once again, thank you to everybody for joining us, to Jay and to Jagat for all their insights. And as I stated earlier, we will be sending a replay of this webcast to everyone within the next few days. So look for that in our follow-up email. Thanks to everybody once again, and enjoy your day.